Good afternoon for an afternoon edition of Beach House's Connected Community. I'm Micah Robbins. You may know me as the Director of Special Projects for the Palm Beach County Substance Awareness Coalition here in Palm Beach, and we are live from the Beach House studios. And joining me in studio today, Mr. Rob Lovett.
Thank you so much for having me today. Very excited about this.
Very good to see you. And on the Skype world, way up north in Boston, it's Morgan Chase from Namastay program up there, Namastay Sober. And we're very delighted to have you on board with us today as we talk about families and friendships and relationships in recovery. And it's a broad topic, very broad topic, but very impactful. Certainly on our end of things, in the prevention world, that relationships are a key component of protective factors, both family, friends, peers, other community members, and but we're going to, as usual, have a discussion about that today. So, first and foremost, we would like to hear a little bit about our guest today. So, Morgan, you have a very unique program up in Boston. It's a charity, Namastay Sober, and please tell us a little bit about that. And it sounds like something really wonderful for people to get involved in.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Mike. Namastay Sober was founded in 2015, and basically what we like to do is create a community around wellness, right? So a lot of getting sober is really challenging in discovering new ways how to live life, ones from which people in recovery can't imagine living their life without the things that are truly causing the most harm, drugs and alcohol most prevalently. So we find supplementing, yoga, rock climbing, boxing, exercise of any sort that really can create a new relationship with taking care of oneself. And also the benefits are immediately visible, right? The endorphins are helpful. You meet new friends doing these awesome activities, become connected in another new wellness-related community. So what we do here is we raise money through private donations. We do fundraising events. We have monthly yoga classes that we offer our community, also discounted rock climbing sessions. We all just really hang out, and we kind of create this sense of camaraderie around being sober and doing fun outdoor, indoor, mindful activities.
And it sounds like you're hitting two of the major protective factors right there. A positive sense and connection to community, and of course, building a positive peer network.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of recovering alcoholics and addicts, like what they were missing is that connection. The isolation is such a huge thing for people who are suffering with addiction because you feel such a sense of shame and guilt around your actions. So it tends to push you into this dark corner where no one really knows what's going on. So this kind of opens up a world where it's like, hey, let's go do this awesome activity because we've been able to provide, those means for people through sponsoring them through memberships that otherwise wouldn't be financially possible for them at this time while they rebuild their life and learn to stay sober.
Fantastic. And Rob, you do a lot of interaction with families here at Beach House.
Yes.
What are you seeing as some of the biggest issues, say, parents have or loved ones have when they're trying to get their loved one support and help with their addiction?
Great question. So I run the family wellness program alongside my co-part Katie, and the biggest question that we end up getting, it becomes a two-part. What did I do wrong and how can I fix this? And oftentimes what we're hearing is, I feel so alone. How could I let this happen? How could I have changed things? And hindsight being 2020, we have to move forward and let the past go. The World Health Organization estimates that 5.4% of the world's population is in active addiction right now. It means 1 out of every 20 people. You're far from being alone. What's important from here is recognizing that even if you were in control of every aspect of your loved one's life, there's still an unaccounted for period of time that you cannot be held responsible for. The only things that you can control are your own actions and your attitude. So moving forward, the most important thing for these loved ones is educating themselves on addiction, becoming more educated as to what their loved one's going through, We may not experience it ourselves, but we can understand what they're going through from a 1,000-foot perspective. Getting involved in the community, helping break the stigma are two very important things. If you want to get more involved, going to a local Al-Anon, Nar-Anon meeting, finding a local community support group. I've heard a lot of great feedback from loved ones that either start or get involved with family support groups. It has nothing to do with the addict themselves, it has everything to do with their loved one, the mother, father, brother, sister, whomever it may be. And we're getting a lot of positive response from that. And that's why we created the Family Wellness Program. There's a lot of programs out that the focus is 100% on the clients, and we just wanted to be able to offer more to the families back home. So having that lifeline that they can reach out to, I'm confused, I don't know where to focus, how can I make my house safe or healthier for them when they return? Those are all questions that we're more than happy to answer. And it's having a pretty big impact.
I think that's one of the biggest things we hear about too, is that after treatment. You know? And of course you have aftercare planning and all those wonderful things, but what is that new world going to be? And certainly for those going through treatment and entering recovery, they have their own set of sort of new world view, but the family itself, and that's the one thing that we hear about so much in the community, is if the family isn't on board and is educated as well, the chances just aren't as great.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's where the big disconnect comes from. Some people have the pick yourself up by the shoelaces mentality. Some people are very strongly codependent, where they think their loved one can't do it without them. And the reality is breaking free from either side of those chains and recognizing, what can I do to make this a healthy transition? What are the triggers in their life? What are things that I can improve upon? Are there books I can read, media that I can take in that would help me be a better version of myself for my loved one and helping them? We can't control what your loved one's doing, but we can control ourselves, and I think that's so important, especially in early recovery. Just being self-aware enough to recognize this might be something I'm capable of working on, and then taking the steps necessary to do it.
And Morgan, when you see folks come in into your new environment, how do you see the family component? You mentioned that you mentioned opening that up to other family members, etc. Do you see a sort of a family model at any point in the programs you have?
Well, I think what's really amazing is that families and like our community conversations, which are groups that we host every other week, right? We do them bi-monthly on Sunday evenings. They're all inclusive. So we want to be a resource for, like, say, the parents of the member who's applying to be a part of our community or looking for that yoga membership or rock climbing membership. They can come with them and learn more about what we're offering to their son or daughter, and then also find the resource there through people that are in recovery who have extended period lengths of sobriety that can give them kind of peace of mind of, like, this is a great place for your child to be. And this is definitely moving in the right direction, because like Robert said, it's really scary for the families, especially people who have never been through this, to kind of navigate, like, okay, what now? How can we make this, something that will stick and something that's safe for their family member, so that they can continue this new life and be successful in recovery.
What do you find, Morgan, to be helpful in helping alleviate those fears and anxieties parents have or family members have supporting their loved ones in recovery?
So I think, this day and age, we're all digital, hence me talking to you from my cell phone screen.
What, you're not live with us here? No.
No, I wish I was in Florida. I'm just up in chilly Boston. A conversation can go a long way. Meeting someone's parent, taking the time face to face to really ensure them, like, this is what we have planned for your son or daughter. This is what we think would be beneficial to them. They're actually a really wonderful, bright light in our community, and that everyone brings something different to the table. And that's kind of what's the beautiful part. It's like this big quilt of people who have come together and kind of bonded similar threads, right, that ties us and holds us together with wellness, with exercise, and then also just being mindful. And Robert mentioned the awareness around something that, I need to improve upon this, and I'm actually going to put some work into it.
And Robert, like I said, you communicate with families on a daily basis. What are some of those things that you find helpful for you in helping them through that journey?
I mean, if I am being self-serving, I went through this myself with my sister. I wasn't in active addiction, she was, and I remember all of those tough emotions. Why is she doing this to herself? Why is she doing this to us? Is there anything that I could have done to have prevented this? Could I have been a better brother? And so knowing what I know now, having educated myself over the past several years and being able to relate that knowledge back to the families, letting them know they're not alone. Other people have experienced the same thing. It does get much better as long as everyone is following the steps necessary and being that source for them. You know, at the end of the day, that's a great feeling to go home to my children and say, I know I have to take this phone call. I know that you're mad at daddy, but I'm helping someone else through a very, very difficult time. And being able to explain, you know, that sense of altruism, that self-sacrifice. I'm doing this because the community as a whole will be better off as a result of me having done this. And I guess that's my big takeaway at the end of the day, but really just wanting to help these families going through potentially the worst period of their life and not knowing what's going on and being able to say, it's okay, we're here for you, there is support, people love you, people care about you, let's take care of this together.
Nice. And Morgan, you mentioned you have an initiative up there with your community conversations. And that's something that certainly is happening here in Florida, and I hope it's happening in communities all across the country. And I just was at one last night, actually, and what I have found is that there is so much not known. This you assume, I think probably because we all work within this space, that it's common knowledge. That, but there is so much that people do not know and understand. Certainly about addiction, certainly about the substance use disorder epidemic that's just rampant in this country right now, and there's a lot of outside fear.
Yeah.
Morgan, in your community, I'm thinking the Northeast. I know the Northeast. I'm a Northeasterner myself, and know how difficult it's been up there. What have you seen in the community as the climate of substance use up there? And I know you're a community leader in bringing that community to change that landscape, but what are you seeing other groups doing up there in the Northeast?
So I've seen, I mean, it's the opioid epidemic that's completely infiltrating the addiction space. Like it's not one or the other. It's kind of like you're all heroin, and like there's no like you're just an alcoholic. It's almost like alleviating kind of that, like to be less, effective towards your family members or destructive, should I say. But it's obviously nationwide, but from our perspective here in Boston, it's everywhere, and more times than not, it's really, really young people coming in that need help, which is frightening in the sense of like, where are they even getting this idea? Where are they getting access to this deadly drug? But then it's also like, okay, we need to up our game on our end on like, how can we be a resource for them? Like Namastay Sober was created in the sense to make sobriety cool. Like, let's make it look fun and enjoying, like you can enjoy life and remember stuff that goes on, right? And not end up getting arrested or end up going to jail or end up really hurting your friends and your family, which can happen in active addiction, obviously, and does in most cases. But the climate here right now is definitely prevalent in opioid addiction. It seems that everybody's been affected by that. And then, they'll try to stop that for a while and turn to alcohol as a supplement. And then that becomes an issue as well.
Yeah. And what you're saying too, Morgan, in the work that you do, and my background's in experiential education, so that changing of the experience set. So, the positive experiences of not only that physical satisfaction of making a climb, of certainly understanding your body, of getting in shape and feeling connected to yourself, but also that it improves the whole experiential set. So all those things that were negative are being filled back up with those positive experiences. And across multiple fields. You guys cover a lot of ground there. And I think that's a real important thing. Do you see in your community other groups that are offering, letting people get out there and have some different experiences, or connecting them back to other community resources? It sounds like you're quite the hub to be supportive. but how about when they can't come to the studio or what have you? Are you seeing the community come around and be supportive of those in recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen more and more yoga and meditation be brought in as a part of treatment plans, which I think is so amazing. I mean, my participation in the Namaste Silver program was how I got started with them. I was their first member in the pilot program. And now, 2+ years later, I teach yoga and meditation full time. It really brought me to my passion. And for me, as a woman in recovery, I'm affected physically, mentally, and spiritually. And yoga gives that back to me. That connects like my physical, mental, and spiritual. And it feeds what otherwise I supplemented with drugs and alcohol. And we find that in our communities, the results are quite similar. It's been a few instances where people try yoga and maybe they're not ready yet, because it's hard when you first come into recovery and you're going a million miles an hour and you really don't know. Rob had mentioned that fear of just not knowing what's next. So we tend to kind of keep the higher level intensity activities for people who are earlier in recovery. We've found success with that. But from kind of our movement, we've seen a ripple effect, which is so positive, because that's what we want. We want people to just embrace, the quality of exercise in any type of self-care program, whether you're in recovery or not. Like, we're only here one time, and our body is the only place we have to live, so we should really take care of it.
I know I need to go maybe do another construction site for mine. Absolutely. Now, Rob, kind of going on sort of the next level, that connection to self and community that Morgan's talking about, how about other relationships? You work and you've created this wellness environment here. What do you talk to clients about as they start taking those baby steps in rebuilding or creating new relationships?
Okay, I think that's a great point to focus on, because what Morgan's touched on already, and what I think is so important, is the aspect of boredom and how it plays into both addiction and relapse. And oftentimes we'll see that clients will try to supplement one unhealthy habit for another. And oftentimes that will take the form of a relationship, sometimes in a very negative way, where they'll get out of treatment and rather than focusing on themselves and on their own recovery, they're so excited about this other person that they met and they want to establish this new groundwork and work on this relationship. But it's kind of the analogy I use. It's like having your coattails on fire and running in a circle trying to put it out. You're the one that's creating the fire because you haven't grounded yourself yet. Until you yourself are grounded, nothing else around you can get better. So taking the time to focus on the activities that Morgan's talking about, working on your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, those should be your primary and pretty much only focus for the first year. If you find other friends in recovery that can hold you accountable and likewise you hold them accountable, fantastic. But I think it's important to hold off on any real romantic expeditions until at least maybe 6 months to a year of sobriety under your belt. And that's just what we've seen, at least historically, with ours. This is not any basis in science. It's just from our own experience within the industry.
And now how about with families as well? So rebuilding those relationships with sibling groups, parents.
Absolutely.
What do you recommend?
Again, education is key. I was very angry for a long time at my sister for almost no fault of her own. Again, the science is coming to show there's only so much of personal responsibility at play when addiction's in question. So it is a two-way street. I can't hold the high ground as the one that never became addicted and say, you did this to yourself, you ruined the family, you allowed this to take place, so you should take all the steps necessary to rebuild that relationship. And unfortunately, what that ends up causing is this rift of morality, where I'm better than you because I never had this happen to me, and therefore you should be coming to me to mend fences. Your family, love them, hate them, indifferent, that's all that you've got. They're the ones that you were born with. And unless you take proactive steps, sometimes saying sorry is not about being sorry, it's about valuing the relationship more than the morality. So it is a two-way street. Telling yourself, okay, they may have made these mistakes, but these are things that I can do to improve my own life. Having a good relationship with this person that's trying to be sober is only going to help them. Trying to help someone and being present as a sober support is only going to help them. If you've never been addicted, if you've never used anything, what better person for them to be attached to than you? Because you clearly have a process in your life where you're able to succeed without using these items. So how about you help them duplicate that lifestyle? And I think that's very important. It's just, I know it hurts. I know it's frustrating. It was a terrible period of your life, and I'm not telling you to forgive that aspect. What I'm saying is give this new person the chance to excel by helping them duplicate your lifestyle. And that's pretty important.
And Morgan, it sounds like you create those lifestyles every day. And again, I wanted to kind of look at that family component one more time, because you mentioned that you have the community, the resource groups. Are you seeing, are people taking advantage of the opportunity to share? Are they taking advantage? One thing I've noticed about some of the family groups that we get started here, boy, oh boy, it is a small group when you start talking about these things. Are you seeing more inclusion because of maybe the length of you been doing that, or how are you seeing the families involved in your groups?
I've seen a few instances where the family members do come out and they make it to the community conversations. But a lot of times what happens is the attendees of the groups, they come, they share openly, they're really involved, and they'll use us as a resource and go home and bring it home to their parents or bring it home to their brother and sister that they've had the issue with. And then we use them offline, not so much in the discussion setting, but kind of like through email, or if they need to call us on the phone. I'm always happy to help. Like I'm not a counselor by any means, but I am someone who's been through similar situations. Like my mother's in recovery, my younger brother is also in recovery. So I've been, both in the seat of I'm the one causing the harm as the person who's struggling with their own addiction, and then watching my brother kind of continue that behavior, like Robert had mentioned with his sister, being angry and frustrated and being like, when is he going to get it? To be able to just share with them what I know to be effective or to be helpful in those times, whether it's just, allowing them to have some compassion for that person, or, just letting the parents know that they're doing a great job and that when they're not around, these are kind of the things that they're alluding to, and it's all positive and they're participating and stuff like that. It really gives a family a lot of peace of mind.
And I think it's that relevant voice.
Absolutely.
I think that's so important. And actually, this kind of segues into a question we have that came from Facebook land. And the question is, and I got this last night, and actually last Tuesday, and the week before that, almost every single group, very common question. Is my loved one cured when they come home from treatment? And what can you do to help as a family member? Goodness, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go to Robert, then we'll go to you, Morgan, then we'll talk about that a little bit.
A lot of that ends up being perspective. So the loved one may believe they're cured. The reality is they are cured from, I believe, that bout of addiction. I don't know that anyone ever feels like they're truly cured. Perhaps one of you may be able to better respond to this. I know that there is success. I don't know that cured is the right term. They can be successful in sobriety. But as far as you helping the family member, being aware of what their triggers are or what familiar behavior is, so you can spot early on if a relapse is present. Taking the steps necessary to be more engaged or involved in their life. Oftentimes what I hear is, what's the difference between codependence and supporting my loved one? And that is as fine a line as they come. I think in reality, especially for the first 6 months, no loose cash. Do not offer loose cash for any reason. I think it's important to establish very solid boundaries. We're thankful that you went through recovery. We're thankful that you did X, Y, Z. You know what your triggers are. We would like to see, and it's a give and take. So we would like to see you do X, and then we will do Y. I'm not going to give you money for dinner, but I'd be more than happy to take you to dinner, because that time we'd be able to reconnect again. We could talk about your experiences, what you're doing, what you're not doing, what you could be doing better. So not offering loose cash, setting healthy boundaries, being aware of who they're spending time with. Oftentimes when a loved one leaves treatment, they may not come home at all. And that's something that one parent to another, I can relate to how terrible that of a feeling that might be. But sometimes they need that fresh foundation to really start over, get their feet underneath them and say, I'm going to start with a fresh slate and it has to be here, and allowing them that room to grow. Again, looking into some educational books. I think it's Codependent No More is a great book. Just different educational material or support teams that you can go to get additional support is going to be very good. If you want to include yourself to some of their Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous meetings, those are all fantastic ideas that have helped many of the people that I've spoken with.
And Morgan, what are your thoughts? It's a snowstorm. That's what happens in Boston. Either that or it was a radioactive lobster. One of the two things.
Boston.
These things happen. But it's interesting that particular, like I said, I get that question over and over and over again. And certainly for our listeners out there, I am not a therapist. I don't play one on TV.
Absolutely.
I'm an educator by training, trade, and degree. But the question comes up, and if you look at sort of the disease model of addiction, cured is not what you're looking for out of treatment. Treatment is I think you said it best, foundation. It's the tools. It's the place where the change starts to happen.
Yeah.
The change, just a little epidemiology. If someone is addicted to opiates, you are not going to heal yourself of an opiate addiction in 28, 30, 90, 120 days. That's the start. The longer you have support and the better foundation you have, the better chance you have to manage that. But now with some of the potencies that are out there, it used to be a 12, 20-month process where the opiate receptors start to heal and the brain changes back to a sense of normalcy. The time frame is longer now. Sadly, to the point where there's a very small percent of the population where it is, might need support forever.
Absolutely.
And so the universe has changed when it comes to addiction. So for those saying, is my loved one cured? They are ready to be helped. They're ready to be loved. They're ready to get on with their lives. And they are ready to now live and understand with themselves and what they have. And you are part of that process as well. I'll relate it to my very personal here. About a month and a half ago, my father, my dad, had a heart attack. I mean, and it is what it is. Of course, he didn't think he was. It's my dad, if you ever know this person. But same thing. Fine. But he, is he cured from a heart attack? No, because when they found out, why'd you have a heart attack? Well, this, and this. Fortunately, we caught it. You have a chance to change this, and this. So was that run at the hospital the cure for his heart attack? No. Did it stop the issue at that time? Absolutely. And now we all have to be there to support him as he moves along that journey, such as probably 2 jelly donuts and a cigarette is not the breakfast of champions.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. That was the rumor, but it's not anymore. But how do you change those patterns and behaviors? And I think when someone comes through a program, they are getting that foundation, they are getting that tools, and that's what they can then practice. And how do we step in and help that practice to surround and support them?
I think that analogy is so great, only because relating addiction to any other medical concern is so appropriate and so important in breaking the stigma of addiction, which breaking that stigma is a community process. We can't do this on our own. That's why programs like Morgan's with Namastay is so important. That's why other community support groups and education, I can't say the word enough, educating yourself in the process is so important. But it sounds like we have Morgan back. Is everything?
Yes. Hi, Morgan.
Hi.
So we were just your thoughts on your loved one coming out of treatment and being cured. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So as previously mentioned, as a woman in recovery, I know there is no cure for this. In our 12-step program, we have a saying, it's one day at a time, right? So on a daily basis, I rejoin the community of recovery. And I've learned the tools that I need to keep my addiction in check. Things like not just not picking up a drug or a drink, but it's like, staying honest with myself and with others. And tools like that have changed the course of my life, right? They're tools that might seem obvious to other people, but what is part of this disease is that we have like a thinking disease, right? Our brains are wired differently from other people's, and we act differently because of that. So there's never a cure. The work is never done. Even when you get through step 12, if that's a fellowship you're a part of, you're always doing other work, because now it's your responsibility as a member of the recovery community to turn around and to give that to someone else in need. There's always new people coming in, and just like someone freely gave it to you when you were new, you are now at the point where you get to turn around and give that back, which is an amazing part of this program, helping other people. And that's kind of what we're doing at Namastay Sober, is creating just kind of a different resource and focal point, like you mentioned, around the wellness and around physical activity. But what we are is very all-inclusive as well. So what I like to bring up is that our founder, Nicoletta Longo, always says she believes everyone's in recovery from something, whether it's drugs, alcohol, an eating disorder, an abusive relationship, codependency, or maybe even, some sort of traumatic family experience in their upbringing. Like, who can't use a little more connection and a little more community and just a lot of love? And that's what we try to bring to our members and to people who just want to be involved. It's really a challenge to hear the word cure, because it's not something that's realistic for anyone that's in recovery. It's a constant battle, and there are good days and there are bad days. But what happens is, as you continue this work and you get plugged in these communities, whether it's 12-step or, rehab programs that offer further treatment and access points beyond being in the center, it's like you have these resources and these tools to use, and it's up to you to use them, right? So for the families, what I would say is the expectations need to go. You don't know what it's like to live with something like that. So whatever you're expecting of your son, daughter, brother, sister, spouse, you need to just let it go and accept what's happening, especially, at the rate, because a lot of times it takes us a lot longer to learn what works and what doesn't, and what helps and what hurts. So, yeah, that's what I got.
And that's a lot. Thank you, Morgan. We have another question that came in, and I'm telling you, they're just like knocking them 1-2 right out of the park.
Very common
question. But the term, it says, I've heard the saying, once an addict, always an addict. Is that true? I shall go back to Morgan first. Morgan, I've heard the saying, once an addict, always an addict. In your experience, is that true?
In my experience, I will always be an alcoholic and an addict, but I'm grateful to say I'm in recovery. So it doesn't make me not an alcoholic. It doesn't erase that whole thing. What it is that I'm accepting that I cannot use in safety. So it doesn't change what I am on the baseline, but it does change how I operate day to day. But if it's in regards to someone's behavior, right, and whether you're willing to trust them or enter a relationship with them or something, I think what needs to happen is the judgment, and like I just mentioned previously, the expectations need to go away. Everyone is different. Everyone deals with their alcoholism and their addiction differently. So you can't box someone in a category like, oh, you're an alcoholic, and you brush them off to the side. People are working really hard to get better. And there's been some amazing transformations in my personal life that I've seen, people that come in and they just turn their whole lives around, including myself, so it would be a loss for that person to just say, oh, once an addict, always an addict, and to brush that person out, because the capabilities, once we're sober and doing the right thing, are endless.
Absolutely, and I think that's really nails it.
Yep.
If you have a disease, once a survivor, always a survivor. Well, great, but what are you doing with your life in between? It's not,
A lot
that's
of
the
it comes
important thing.
from the perspective you put on the word.
Yeah.
It's such an all-encompassing word, like so many others. So to say someone who's in active addiction is an addict, or someone that's 25 years sober is an addict, there's clearly that broad that gap in between that you were talking about. So what is the onus that we put on that word? What does that word interpret to you? Is it a positive? Is it a negative? Is it just a defining comment for you? So I think that's really the importance that we put on it. I think someone recognizes that they have the capacity to fall back into their old habits, and they now have the capacity to overcome that. But it's that recognition of, I know that if I take X, Y, Z steps, I am going to go in this particular path. So it's just very self-aware. I am self-aware of my potential to make the same mistakes, and therefore I have decided to move past that situation. So it's what onus do you put on the word? What does the word mean to you? If there's a negative connotation, then by all means, don't use it. But if you look at it in the positive light of, I was an addict, I am now in recovery, but I have the potential to be an addict if I stop being in recovery, then by all means, don't use it in that situation.
And it sounds like Morgan, and what you're talking about too, Robert, is taking those words and looking at the words of strength and not the words of despair or hopelessness. I mean, you almost take it's written out here for us right now. Someone wrote it, we got to see it. Take that saying and don't put it on a black background, put it on a big sunrise, and it changes the entire perspective of that saying. The tools you had to use to be a good addict are some pretty impressive tools to have a great life in sobriety. And of the work that we do and the relationships we've created in this environment, et cetera, you find that those things are just as important, and you actually have this incredible skill set that just needs to be retuned. And once that gets retuned and that self-discovery comes back, I mean, Morgan, you found your love, your passion for a work that you do that was not anything that was your original path, correct?
Right, yeah. When I was active in addiction, I had gone to school for broadcast journalism, and I was a television reporter, and I thought that was it, right? I only would want to report on parties and nightlife, and I couldn't see why. I thought that was just my interest. Turns out I was centering my life around drugs and alcohol, around the party scene and the chaos of it all. And through recovery and through the opportunity that Namastay Sober gave me to get plugged in and find yoga as a practice, it's daily for me, just like any other tool that I use in my recovery now. And it got to a point where I was so in love with it. I was like, how do I take this to the next level, right? You had just mentioned the tools we used to be great addicts and great alcoholics. Like, I was always persistent, and I always would go after what I wanted with, until I got there. So I did the same thing in recovery. And when I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to pursue yoga as my full-time job, and everyone told me I couldn't do it, and to get a part-time job first and start slow, I was like, I don't know if you know who you're talking to. Like, I'm going to do this. And so I got my 200-hour yoga teacher training, and I've been teaching full-time ever since. I teach 17 classes a week, 2 of which include young men's sober houses, because I try to get yoga into as many recovery settings as possible. So through Namastay Sober, through free community donation-based classes for people who can't afford studios. It's just like an accessibility point is lacking in the yoga community, and especially for people in recovery. So through my connection with Namastay Sober, and now as their director of memberships, being a full-time yoga teacher just adds another resource for us. Like, oh, well, Morgan will just teach a class and we'll have an event. And it allows the families and the friends and the people who really need the yoga to come together and kind of bond over that.
And you mentioned something too, and this is for both you, Morgan, and Robert. Morgan, you mentioned something I think was really poignant there. Your life that you had predicted for yourself, if you will, it was the chaos. It was a chaotic environment. And you had to transcend that and find your inner... I mean, let's look at a life of yoga and meditation versus a life of being a social reporter and the party scene person. those are two diametrically opposed things. But obviously you found your true self going through that process. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, Robert, when you're working with these families as well so far, tell us a little bit about that movement from chaos to order, if you will.
A lot of that time frame is, as Morgan was telling us, is based on previous expectation. So the family members have a certain expectation of their loved one during this transition, and that they expect them to come home late, perform a certain action, go see a certain group of people. And I think it's so important for both parties, both the addict and the loved one, to communicate what changes are taking place. If you want this to be successful, it's important for the loved one to state, this is what I don't want to see happen. Can you help set me at ease? I want to trust you. I want to be a part of your life post-addiction, but I can't do that with my current set of expectations. And then it's equally, if not more so important for the addict to say, I'm no longer communicating with these people. Maybe I got a new phone with a new set of contacts so the old people can't reach out to me. Maybe I started a new job in a new company where, I don't know anybody that walks by the shop and offers me whatever. So I think those expectations need to be molded correctly for both parties in order for either of them to be successful. If both people go in it just full in a china shop, I'm going to do things my way and you're going to do things your way and we'll just meet somewhere in the middle, it never ends up very well. So that communication, setting the right expectations, and changing your actions post-treatment.
And speaking of, we're talking about definition here almost of where people are in their certain stages of recovery. And this question just came through, and I know it's very important in the work I do, but the term, should we use the term substance use disorder instead of addict? Will that help the perspective of others? First of all, that's a fabulous question. And I'll throw an answer out there to start, and then certainly we'll share that. But moving the nomenclature, if you will, away from drug addict and things like this is such a complex issue. So substance use disorder, SUD, is a lot more pleasant than druggie or addict. It encompasses the complexity of it. It's also, we're trying to move away from mental health disorders and substance use and combine it. It's a behavioral health. This is a behavioral health disorder. We're dealing with behavioral health. There's mental health challenges. Sometimes that's part and parcel with substance use challenges, and vice versa. So absolutely, getting people to understand that this is a complex disease and issue, and that we have to look at that in very carefully. So it also takes the label off people, and I think he said it, just to brush them off. Addict, This is people. This is our community, moms, dads, kids, cousins, friends. So should we use the term? For my opinion, absolutely. And does that change the perspective? I certainly hope so. Yep. I think that's one of the key ingredients to changing the stigma and removing the stigma from substance use disorders and families that are dealing with that. Like I said, my one person's opinion, but I welcome yours.
I 100% agree. I think rebranding has been happening for generations, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. And if that rebranding is the step that we need to take to have a positive inflection on what's taking place in the world, again, 1 out of 20 people currently are struggling with an addiction. And if changing the term to substance use disorder causes more people to be proactive in educating themselves and taking steps necessary to help their loved ones and their community, by all means, do it. It really comes to a personal decision. If you already have a negative connotation of addict, and substance use disorder has a much softer appeal, please start using it. But I absolutely agree. If rebranding is the direction we need to take, then let's hit the gas and go full force.
And Morgan, what do you think?
I agree. Well, it's a wonderful question, and honestly, I've never really put enough thought into it, because I feel like in the 12-step community that I'm a part of, it's part of your introduction. You say your name, and then you say if you're an alcoholic and an addict or just an addict. And I think maybe a shift would be a challenge in that sense, but I also can't help but imagine it to be really beautiful in what it brings. Substance use disorder, it really does classify it, and it's all encompassing for the two things. I think it's really nice, especially like in the vein of talking with, mental health disorder, and it just kind of follows suit with all of that. It really brings it to more of like a medical perspective, which I think just in history's sake that people have, more of a respect for.
It comes, a lot of that stigma change and that transformation, if you will, it comes full circle back to community and what the community is embracing and what the community is supporting. And Robert said it multiple times, you've said it too, Morgan, is that this change of education, this change of understanding, this change of learning that has to take place. This issue didn't happen overnight. The changes and the solutions aren't going to happen overnight. I think one of the challenges I face in going out in the community, the community is looking for a cure.
Absolutely.
And, this is an environmental issue. This is a long time familial issue. And we have to get back down to the roots of why did we get in this place in the first, how did we get here? And yes, we can point the finger at pharmaceuticals and this and that, but there's a reason why people engage in such behaviors, both from the disease model aspect, both from a sociological aspect, and finding those, again, these aren't going to be simple answers and simple solutions, and it's going to take time. But what I think what Morgan has shared today with her program, and Robert, what you do in that, and look at those words. Your program is called Namastay today. You have the wellness. These are inclusive, pleasant things. This isn't treatment, and these aren't gym class. These aren't things that have negative connotations. These are things that are inclusive and pleasant, and things that shows the positive of what's happening. And I think that's a start, and also building those bridges to the community that doesn't have that understanding. And I think that's where you get into true prevention, and that's where we can start being responsive as opposed to being reactive when these things happen. And I know that for myself, anytime there are more resources and tools at the table, everything improves. And Morgan, when you're talking about the work you do, those are such foundational elements to anybody's positive existence. And those in recovery, those not, to find that center, to find that ability to connect and feel important, both mind, body, and spirit. It's the trilogy that's been the savior for forever. And helping people get there is so very important. And Robert, bringing those families together to understanding, to realize that we're going to do this together. We can get well together is so very important. So just on a closing note, if there's a few more thoughts, Morgan, you'd like to share with our group, and we're going to ask Robert the same, and then we'll close out yet another incredible conversation on our connected community today. But Morgan, a few final words for you.
Final words. I just have had such a wonderful time being a part of this discussion this afternoon, and really, for me, a person in recovery, it's very scary in the beginning, and I'm speaking now to people who are affected by this. Don't be so afraid, because everyone in the recovery community has been where you are, and we want to help you. So if there's a way that you're looking to explore and you're finding your true self and you're like, wow, I think yoga would be amazing, but I don't know where to start, or what is everyone going to think? Don't let that stop you, because I did for a long time. And once I finally broke through that, the course of my life has changed. So get connected, reach out, tell other people that you're new and that you need help, and we're going to be here for you always.
Wonderful. Rob?
Yeah, I think the important terminology we've been using is community, and oftentimes I think when people hear community, they think everyone but me. And I think when the rest of everyone else thinks the way that I do, everything will get better. And it's so very important to remember that each and every one of us makes up the community. We, the individuals, are the community. And you can't sit in your lazy chair and expect everyone else to do the work. Someone out there needs what you can offer. They need your talent, skills, and abilities. They need your education, your insight, your background story. So you have to become engaged. You have to become that change. You can't expect anyone else to do it. So if you're unhappy with the way that this perception is taking place, if you feel like you're alone, go out and offer your services and realize just how not alone you actually are. So the real change is going to happen when enough people step up and say, I need to do a better job to support my community, to support this issue. And then that's when the real magic's going to happen.
Morgan Chase with Namastay Sober. Please check them out. Robert Lovett, Beach House Center for Recovery. And as usual, I'm Micah Robbins, Palm Beach County Substance Awareness Coalition. Please, it comes full circle. Robert, you said it so well. It's about community. This is about building bridges in community. Get connected. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next month. And please check us out on Facebook, like with your friends, and all those wonderful social media-like things. But again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you to you both. And I look forward to doing this again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.